Ink and Paint is a colossal book in more ways than one. Just the size of this is incredible. I will say it's actually a little too big to be comfortable. It's a very thick book, very, very large. I mean, compared to the size of my hand, you can see that. And I'm reading it. I've been reading it sitting on my bed with it resting against a pillow. But ordinarily, if I was sitting in a chair reading it, it would be far too heavy. So I just thought I'd get that minor point out of the way before I go in with this with really nothing but praise. This is written by Mindy Johnson with a foreword by the brilliant June Foray, and as you can see, this is about the women of Walt Disney's imagination. And this covers basically the history of Walt Disney Animation Studios chronologically and how the various women involved shaped both how the studio worked and the way that various pictures looked. And I will say it's absolutely beautifully written, apart from one thing. And I can probably turn to any page and show an example of this. I won't obviously go through every single page. This is just a brief overview to show you what it's like in case you've been considering buying it. I do thoroughly recommend it. My only two quibbles are the size. I did read some reviews on Amazon where people had issues with the binding. The binding on mine is perfectly fine, but there have been some reported cases of the pages coming away because it's just so heavy and cumbersome. Not a problem for me, thankfully. This was published originally in 2017, and my only other quibble, apart from the size, is that it's got a real problem with common nouns being capitalized. And as I said, I can probably turn to any random page and find an example. I say that now, I probably can't, but for example, it would say an animator, and animator would be capitalized, and that's not correct. The only time I accept it is when they call them inkers or painters, because they are technically proper nouns because it's the ink and paint department. But yeah, there are a lot of times when common nouns are written as proper nouns, and it really bothers me because it's basically on every single page. And it just baffled me that something so beautifully, professionally published could get something as simple as common nouns wrong. But once I overlooked that, I was able to enjoy this for all of its glory. And I apologize for this glare here. I tried to find the best position to show you this, but it's a large book. So we go through, as I said, I'll just give you a brief overview of the kind of thing you can expect. I won't go through every single page, but we have a look. Obviously, we're at the Laugh-O-Grams and the Alice comedies. There's quite a bit about the creation of Mickey Mouse. As you can see there, we have the kind of chronological approach and a brief overview of what you can expect in the coming pages. The images in this are just so stunning. So many photographs. And obviously we have a lot of the examples of the animation that's being discussed. We have the silly symphonies, and then we go through to the feature films. You have Dopey there. And it basically is just a full history of Disney animation, but with focus on the women involved. And that's not to say it doesn't ever mention men, it definitely does. But there are some beautiful stories. I love this. This is one of my favorites. It's at some point they have to start wearing ID badges, and I think that's so fabulous. That's such a lovely bit of history. And interestingly, when I was reading this, I did think, how much am I going to learn? I've read a lot of books about the history of Disney, and I've even read a couple of books about the women of Disney. But I did indeed learn some things, such as that ID badge. It's very, very well researched. The information in this is gorgeous. Although in the interest of complaining about things, they don't the quotes are not properly edited. Sometimes they'll put in square brackets when you need to add in additional information or amend something, and occasionally they'll put sic, S-I-C, in brackets, but not correctly. Not every time, but there are quite a few times where they've put in square brackets to amend quotes and they've got the grammar wrong, or it's not fulfilling its intended purpose. So it does confuse me how this is generally so beautifully edited, so beautifully written and put together, but there are some very basic grammar rules that they just seem to get completely wrong. I love this. Absolutely love it. As you can see, we have, I go back, we have kind of fact files, if you like, on, you know, specific women. It's not just the inkers and painters as well. It looks at obviously the females in Disney's family life and other women who played important roles throughout Disney and the history of Disney animation. There's some interesting information about when they moved to Xerox, or when they were practicing with the Xerox machines, and changes that were made to the inking and painting, which is, you know, on the one hand kind of heartbreaking because that's the loss of a tradition, but at the same time exciting because of what technology can bring. And at the back here, where are we? Yeah, we have page after page. Almost memorializing the inkers and painters, to the point where I want to actually Google each of these artists and see what else they did and find out more about them. So this itself is so lovely and such a nice way to say, look at all of these women who contributed to Disney in their own ways. And for most of them, we'll never know exactly which scenes they worked on or what cells they painted, which is, I mean, a shame because people just didn't get credit as deserved back in the day. Not just women, but, you know, largely women. There's some pretty awkward examples of advertisements that Disney would put out at the beginning of the studio asking for just men or just women, and it's like that would never happen today. Really such a fascinating read, beautifully written for the most part, with the exception of the issue with the common nouns and the poor editing of existing quotes. It is a massive book, and it's not even so much that you could argue that it's a coffee table book, because it's designed to be read in its entirety, not flicked through like a coffee table book. But that aside, it is absolutely stunning. If you're a fan of Disney, I thoroughly recommend Ink and Paint. It is a beautiful read, eye-opening, insightful, so many gorgeous images. As you saw there were pictures on pretty much every page, whether that's examples of cells or, you know, examples of the work they were doing, or we had photographs from the studios of the women and their other colleagues. It's just beautiful. Very, very exceptionally well researched, generally well written, beautifully presented. A little on the hefty side. As you can see, get the full size of it there. But other than that, Ink and Paint is utterly beautiful and entirely worth it.